The Gorillaz went in search of something, but something was searching for them. At the top of the mountain, a journey that should have been a dream soon became a nightmare. They wanted to shoot a movie, but now they are the movie. There is no way down the mountain. At the top of the mountain, they are at the bottom of the food chain. Don't go up the mountain. It's a jungle out there.
I am the one to save your Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 60 of the Radar, the episode where I'm talking about Gorillaz, The Mountain, their album, The Mountain. Now, if you know anything about Gorillaz and you've seen the promotions for this episode, you may be asking one thing. Alex, are you talking about an album that isn't even out yet? Are you just going to talk about things that, like the singles and stuff, to get people excited for when it releases this Friday? No, listener. I've actually already listened to the entire album in full. So you're thinking, oh, so you heard a leak. No, I actually went to a listening party for the album at a record store last night, and I got to hear the entire album in full with other Gorillaz fans. So I have a lot of opinions on the album, a lot of opinions on this project, and I'm very excited to get into it song by song, especially since it's an album that I'm assuming no one else in this building has even heard yet in full. So it's a very exciting thing to talk about. So before we get into the actual album, The Mountain, the upcoming Gorillaz album, why don't we talk a little bit about Gorillaz? Because you may not be familiar with Gorillaz. This actually isn't the first time I've talked about the band on this show. I actually did an episode on them on Album Roulette where me and my friend Matt talked about Demon Days. They're one of their albums, and I mentioned them briefly in the very first episode of the show, and then I also mentioned them in the Virtual Bands episode pretty extensively. But I wanted to dedicate an entire episode of the band that was sort of the gateway drug for me when it came to music. So why don't we just talk about what Gorillaz is, and then I'll tell you what Gorillaz means to me, and then it'll kind of be this segment leading into the Mountains release. So what Gorillaz is a virtual band, but let's take a step back. Gorillaz are Damon Albarn and Jamie Hewlett. Damon Albarn of Blur fame and Jamie Hewlett of Tank Girl fame. Blur, if you don't know, is a 1990s, late 80s Brit-pop group. Brit-pop being British pop during the Brit-pop wars of the 90s. They faced off against Oasis. Damon Albarn was the head of Blur. And then Tank Girl was a comic strip, a very gritty, gross, kind of grimy British comic strip in Deadline magazine. So you had this comic artist and you had this musician. Now, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty because I have a lot I want to talk about, but at some point, these two had become roommates in London, and they were watching nothing but MTV for basically 12 hours a day, and after watching so much MTV, their brains kind of slowly melted from all the slop and celebrity culture and kind of realized the sentiment of, if celebrities are so fake all the time, and all of this celebrity culture is so fictionalized, why don't we make an actual fictional band? Actual fictional, kind of an oxymoron there, but a fictional band. That way you could do whatever you wanted and make the most interesting product ever, or most interesting project ever. So with Damon's ear for eclectic music stylings and Jamie Hewlett's artistic background, they combined their powers and created the group Gorillaz. Now, while Damon is in charge of the music and the actual direction they're taking in sound, Jamie is the head of the art, the idea of what these characters looked like, what their backstory was. These two worked together on a manifesto together of what these bandmates would look like. These bandmates ended up evolving into Gorillaz. Gorillaz being 2D, the blue-haired, black-eyed, sometimes white-eyed lead singer, real name Stu Pott, who... he's the lead singer. He's the face of the band. He's the pretty boy. And then he had to meet. There's a whole backstory of how they met with lore. He met bassist Murdoch Nichols, who is green, has black hair. He was born on June 6, 1966, so 666. He made a deal with the devil to become a famous musician, and that apparently actually canonically happened. And he made Gorillaz. Their drummer Russell, who is possessed by his dead friends and can speak to the dead and bring the dead back to the life to join them for a song. This will become important later. And finally, their guitarist, that's right, you guessed it, 9-year-old little Chinese girl Noodle. So this is Gorillaz. The reason 2D has two black eyes, and I mean eyes that are black. I don't mean like bruised eyes, and blue hair. Blue hair because he fell out of a tree. It all fell out and grew back blue for some reason. And his eyes are black because... because Murdoch crashed a car through the keyboard shop that 2D was working in and crashed the car right into his eye, and it filled with blood. And then the lore doesn't matter. I'm kind of getting into it too much. Originally, this episode was going to be about the entire lore of the band and go song by song, album by album. But I had the opportunity to listen to their newest album early, so I want to talk about that way more. Point is, Gorillaz' gimmick is that they are fictional characters. 2D, Russell, Murdoch, and Noodle. Spoiler alert, they're not real, unfortunately, but Damon Albarn and Jamie Hewlett are. And they wanted to use this fictional band as a, as a vehicle to get, I would say, usher in like a politics, but have a message, you know, without worrying about what they look like. They could actually physically craft what they look like extensively. And so with that, they released their first album, their self-titled album in 2001, Gorillaz, which is the one with them on the Jeep. It's all green and stuff. That album is extensively trip hop and hip hop heavy and very, very experimental. A lot of weird sounds on it. It's super interesting. It features songs like 19, 2000 and Clint Eastwood, which features Del, the funky Homo sapien. Excuse me. You probably know Clint Eastwood if you've heard it. I ain't happy, I'm feeling glad, I got sunshine in a bag. This album was a big hit. It featured music videos of the cartoon characters. At this point, Gorillaz were anonymous. They would perform on stage behind a curtain with silhouettes. It was a big deal. You didn't know who Gorillaz were except the cartoon characters. Then that came out in 2001. Then there was a hiatus. Then they came back in 2005 after Damon and Jamie had gone to China and took like a train through China. And they noticed how different each of the different cities were. One city would be beautiful and prosperous. One would look like an apocalypse just happened. This sort of consumption of oil and this gap between the 1% and the different generations and what it's doing to the young people and the young folk inspired the album Demon Days in 2005, which went on to have the single Feel Good Inc., which is their most popular song by a long shot, featuring De La Soul. That album also features MF Doom and a bunch of other artists that you're going to notice that a big quintessential part to the Gorillaz experimental sound is the featured guests. Damon Albarn and Jamie Hewlett are Gorillaz, but it's not Gorillaz without a wide, eclectic group of guest musicians, whether that's producing, bass, guitar, rapping, whatever it is. Now, after Demon Days, another 5-year gap, they release an album that continues the lore. This time, all the characters are actually aging up, by the way. So little 9-year-old Noodle is like 16 now. In lore, the fictional characters find a island of plastic garbage, paint it orange and make it look like an island, and they call it Plastic Beach. And there's actually, again, a lot more fictional character lore, but that's not terribly important. I could do a whole episode on that. But Plastic Beach had Damon and Jamie take on a more environmental perspective, talk about what we're doing with, you know, the large garbage patch in the ocean or the hole in the ozone layer. This is around 2010 when that was a little more relevant in the public conversation. But they had people like Bobby Womack. They had people like Snoop Dogg. Excuse me, De La Soul was back, and Demon Days, by the way, even more critically acclaimed than the first Gorillaz album, and Plastic Beach almost even more than that. Demon Days and Plastic Beach are considered the crowning albums by these guys. Like Plastic Beach and Demon Days are incredible albums, and not just in concept, because they had an idea of a message they want to point across or wanted to get across, and they tackled it with collaborators in mind and with production in mind, and everything was towards a message. Whether Demon Days was war is bad and consumerism is bad, or whether it's Plastic Beach with please recycle, take care of the environment, we only get one Earth. And it's never preachy. It's in such good taste. But then you're wondering what happened after Plastic Beach. Plastic Beach, there was the longest hiatus yet, 7 years, until 2017, when I started becoming a fan of Gorillaz when I was in grade 9. Not to make Leslie, who's in the studio, feel terribly old. Sorry, Leslie. Gorillaz came out with their newest album in 7 years called Humans. Humans, some people say, was a step back. Humans was more explicitly political. Spoiler alert, aiming a bit at the new president, Donald Trump, and his administration, and a little pro-Obama, a little anti-capitalist again, but a little bit more explicit in its commentary, which is awesome. But the album didn't feature a lot of Damon Albarn, which, by the way, is obviously the lead singer of the group as 2D in Universe. It featured a lot of political commentary, a lot of rapping, a lot of electronic music influence, and a lot of political commentary, but not a lot of Damon Albarn, which a lot of people complained about. So as a follow-up, without waiting 5 years, another album came out the next year called The Now Now. The Now Now came out in 2019. The Now Now, a brief 42-minute thing with only 2 features, entirely 2D / entirely Damon. Incredible album. I was there for the release. I was extremely excited. The Now Now is followed up a year later or 2 years later with Song Machine. Song Machine, parentheses, season 1, parentheses, Strange Times. Awful title, but it's actually pretty good. Song Machine, the premise of this was it was COVID, and so what they did is they invited a different artist for each song, and they did these episodes ideas where Damon would collaborate with a different artist from around the world on each song. They would do an animated music video featuring the animated band members, and it would be a big deal because each song would be so distinct, but it'd be like one package, which is kind of neat. It's kind of like a compilation album. See last RAEDAR episode, but you know, one actual album. So it's called The Song Machine. It featured people like Elton John or Robert Smith or Slow Tie, a lot of really eclectic group of artists. after Song Machine. I was actually pretty excited for Song Machine. I remember worshiping the Gorillaz when that album came out and loving each song that was released until the next album, which is the album that came out in 2023, 3 years ago to the day, I believe, Cracker Island. Cracker Island came out on February 24th, 2023. And this album, to me and a lot of other fans, was a step back. You may have noticed that I mentioned what the commentary was on Demon Days and Plastic Beach and how that worked so well for it and how those albums are still the most critically acclaimed. Well, we've kind of been missing that commentary a little bit. And Cracker Island is kind of, to me, the antithesis of what Gorillaz is. If I had to describe a good analogy for selling out, this is kind of it. Not to say they did sell out explicitly, but Damon Albarn met with another producer and a lot of other artists, and while the list of artists that are featured on that album is eclectic, it's not as interesting as other ones. It features Bad Bunny, Stevie Nicks, Thundercat, Tame Impala. Like, those are popular artists, but one of the artists, I think Plastic Beach has like the Youth Syrian Orchestra. Like, what are we doing here? That's so awesome. But Cracker Island wasn't as well received because they announced the album a year before it came out. They did these weird TikToks. They almost did NFTs at one point. It was a real step in the wrong direction for the group for a lot of people. That being said, there are some good songs on Cracker Island, but for me, it just wasn't for me, even though I went to the album's tour. I wasn't crazy about it. A lot of people weren't. I honestly haven't even listened to the full album again since it released, even though I have it on vinyl. I have all their albums on vinyl. But it kind of skewed me off the Gorillaz path. That is until last year they announced their next album, their 9th album, The Mountain. The Mountain is very rich in context, and I think now is a good time to do a transition here, do a music break, because I've yapped a lot. So now you're up to speed. They have an album coming out called The Mountain. We already played you one track from The Mountain, The Happy Dictator, featuring Sparks. We're gonna play you two more. We're gonna play you The Hardest Thing, featuring the late Tony Allen, which is kind of a interlude that leads into Orange County, featuring Bizarre Rap, Kara Jackson, and Anushka Shankar, which a lot of features. We'll get into it. But that'll be by Gorillaz. Please don't forget that you can follow us on social media. I'm doing this in a weird order. I apologize to my text. Don't forget you can follow us on social media at the DCSA Media Hub. You can follow me on Instagram at AlexRAE. That's RAE. You can follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at the Radar Live, also RAE. In the meantime, here are the songs I just said, playing us by Gorillaz live from the Media Hub on riotradio.ca.
Oh yeah, Eddie de Erori. Oh yeah, Eddie de Erori. Oh yeah, Eddie de Erori.
Hardest thing is to say goodbye goodbye to someone you love. That's the hardest thing. You know the hardest thing is to say goodbye to someone you love. That's the hardest thing.
Every face you forgot, father's child, they suspend the clock. Another star, get another chance to love.
I hear you now, I understand you lost the day to get tomorrow back. But what of the toll? That's the hardest thing
I'm not your enemy. Your legacy frightens me. Will I keep it gold, or will it spoil before I get the chance to grow?
I don't know if I can take this anymore. So why you trying to break me? I don't know if I can stay on board. You know the hardest thing is to say goodbye to someone you love. That's the hardest thing.
I'm not your enemy. Your legacy frightens me. Will I keep it gold, or will it spoil before I get the chance to grow?
You know the hardest thing is to say goodbye to someone you love. That's the hardest thing. And I'm not your enemy. You're out of gun, you stand alone, and everything you gave to someone you love. That's the hardest thing. That's the hardest thing. You know the hardest thing is to say goodbye to someone you love. That's the hardest thing. You know the hardest thing is to say goodbye to someone you love. That's the hardest
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Just a little extra Orange County there to whet your palate. Welcome back to episode number 60 of The Radar, the episode where I'm talking about the yet-to-be-released album, The Mountain by Gorillaz. Now that you're all caught up on Gorillaz the band, I'm going to tell you about Gorillaz and my relationship with the band very briefly, because I don't have a lot of music, but you know. So Gorillaz were the gateway drug for me when it came to music. I was in elementary school and middle school, I was super into animation. I was super into cartoons, Gravity Falls, Star vs. the Forces of Evil, Steven Universe, Rick and Morty, all these cartoons that were out at the time. That was my main thing. I wasn't even really into music until the summer from grade 8 to grade 9, right into high school. I discovered Gorillaz because they were cartoons and they were fun, but that kind of exposed me to a lot of eclectic, interesting music. Trip hop, R&B, reggae, pop, rock, all these different inspirations that they pull from were such an interesting mixture of music to me that although I came for the cartoon characters and the lore, I stayed for the interesting, compelling music. And one feature to Gorillaz music that I've often said, what I call the Gorillaz effect, that my friend Matt has also coined, because I got him into the band, is if you listen to a Gorillaz song and you go, I don't really care for this one, it's not really my speed, just listen to it again or maybe another time, because then it will become your favorite. That has happened for almost every single Gorillaz album or song for me. And that doesn't necessarily stop at the mountain. So why don't we tackle this mountain? Why don't we climb this mountain a little bit and talk a little bit about the album? So what's different about the mountain compared to Cracker Island, let's say? Well, when they announced the mountain, they announced it with the single The Happy Dictator featuring Sparks, the British rock duo. The mountain felt whole because not only did they announce the album The Mountain, okay, we have a new album coming out, they announced it with the premise, because this is a concept album, which is really awesome. The two biggest interesting things about The Mountain, you'll notice, if you've seen, the album cover's up. Oh my God, I didn't even notice. I was going to ask to throw that up. Perfect. You may notice that's not English. That's actually that is Devanagari, and that spells out Parvat, which is the mountain, I believe, in Devanagari. I'm likely not saying that right, but the premise of the album is that Damon Albarn and Jamie Hewlett in real life had unfortunately suffered great loss. Specifically, in Damon's case, his dad had died, and Jamie Hewlett's stepmom or mother-in-law and his dad also died. So both of them had experienced some sort of loss in their life, big loss. And at that time, Damon Albarn, whose dad was a huge fan of Indian-inspired music, had taken a trip to India to to get rid of his ashes, as it were. And Jamie came along with him. And while the two of them were in India, the two had grown closer than they ever have been since Plastic Beach. Not to say they were distant in their artistic ideas, but being together in India in such an artistically palatable, incredible world, it was a huge inspiration for them musically, artistically, visually, and sonically. It was just this wondrous palette. And so The Mountain is very, very inspired by not just Indian music, but Indian culture. There are so many different aspects to it. Unfortunately, I am not experienced enough with the music of India to give you specific examples other than how much sitar is on this album. There's a huge amount of sitar that you may be familiar with, the instrument, and also features a lot of iconic artists from India. But another important tenet to this album and its concept is loss, is death, is life and death. And one of the ways it tackles that is by having a lot of posthumous features. And what I mean by that are artists that were on previous Gorillaz songs are on this album, even though they've passed since their feature. Whether this be demos, whether this be freestyles they didn't end up using, there's a lot of artists that are dead on this album, and they realize they can use the idea of Russell, the fictional character who can talk to the dead, use his powers to feature these artists. And they are featured legitimately. It's not AI, it's not anything like that. These are actual tracks with them, with the songs worked around it. And it does feature a live artist as well. So you have this beautiful Indian-inspired, sonically created album that comes in at 66 minutes that features artists that have passed away, like Bobby Womack, David Jolicoeur, Tony Allen, Proof, and Mark E. Smith, and even the late Dennis Hopper, who was featured at the end of Demon Days on their track Fire Coming Out of a Monkey's Head. And also, interestingly, the album not only is sonically inspired by Indian music and Indian culture, it features English, Arabic, Hindi, Spanish, and Yoruba. So this album is so eclectic in its culture, and this is so different than what I listen to, and rather, conflictingly, got me extremely excited, because you look at the promotions for Cracker Island and it was just pink and what if cell phones are bad and it's a cult and Hollywood's a cult. It's like, okay, Everyone knows that. That's not very interesting. But to have this idea of the two taking a trip to India and then taking the fictional characters to India to learn about loss and what comes after death and what death means, and to not be scared of death, and to utilize fictional characters and previous dead collaborators is such a compelling hook that I was hooked. So, for example, on The Hardest Thing, which we played you, the late Tony Allen is on that song. And another song we'll be playing you, we won't be playing you because it has curse words in it, but the Manifesto has proof of D12 on it, which has been recycled from a 2001 freestyle for their track 911. That's incredible. But I do want to get into the songs. I'm taking a long time here, I'm realizing. Let's get into The Mountain, because I got to listen to The Mountain, and it was great. I'll tell you that right now. Spoiler alert, the album is awesome. I've loved every song. I've listened to every song that's already been released 9 times over, and that's 25 minutes of music. Let me take a sippy here for a second. Ooh, going really fast here. Got a lot to say. Oh, okay. So The Mountain, the opening track, is a very beautiful Eastern Asian-inspired flute, sitar, really great, growing voices saying The Mountain in a sound collage. I love it. Very strong intro. The Moon Cave is super funky, extremely accessible right out the gate. It's like, I'm going to compare a lot of these songs to other Gorillaz songs because I feel like that's the best way to describe it. So if you know the song, great. If you don't, I'm sorry. The Moon Cave is like Andromeda meets Empire Ants. Raw psychedelic instrumentation, hypnotizing, feels like another world. Goes into this funky Gorillaz self-titled backing track with a rap verse. Goes right into beautiful flutes. The Happy Dictator, we already played you. It's ridiculously catchy, just eclectic enough to make it Gorillaz, but I think the most accessible song from the album yet. Perfect first single. The Hardest Thing, we played you. Tony Allen is welcomed here, a harrowing pseudo interlude that sets an emotional vibe for the next track. The brass here reminds me of Stop the Dams from their B-side album D-Sides. Huge compliment. The strings add so much texture. Orange County, the one, easily the most emotional single. The melody of the song such an earworm. While the song's griefful context could be portrayed purely with sadness, there's a hint of bittersweetness to it. I also just love songs with whistling. I really like the part where the instrumental stops briefly when Damon sings "That's the Hardest Thing," and it goes right back into it. The God of Lying will play you in a bit here. It reminds me in parts to Gorillaz and Demon Days, the albums. A moody synthesizer haven, very atmospheric, has an aura of haunting mystery. The Empty Dream Machine comes next. Funky bass line, foreboding. Sounds hopeless, desolate. Interesting, trippy voice effects on Damon during the title mention. Some people have mixed feelings about that. It's weirdly auto-tuned in a weird way. Rhythmically reminds me of Clint Eastwood. Vibe-wise, maybe 1% from the Now Now. Black Thought takes charge during his segment with more vitriol than Damon held back from. Damon is sad, regretful. Black Thought is angry. Agnushka's voice is a great compliment to Damon. Very to binge. The Manifesto. The Manifesto is interesting. It's named after the manifesto they made for Gorillaz back in the day that Russell could talk to the dead, and it features what's his name? Proof from D12. There's Truno's rapping part, which he raps in Spanish. He's from Argentina. Originally put me off, but it grew on me a lot. His Spanish part paired up with a gorgeous Indian-sounding instrumental complemented each other a lot. I adore the strings, and I really enjoyed the mentioning of the mountain. Very cohesive. Proof's part also needed to grow on me, more than Truno's, but I've grown to love it just as much. The Plastic Guru, which is not out yet, is maybe my favorite song on the album. That is next. Excuse me. It's very synth pop, a lot loftier than the other songs. Feels like I'm above the clouds. It has the lyrics, "We believe what we choose, is that not the truth?" Incredible. This is so strong. Who knew sitar could complement synthesizer so well? Then a lot of fans' favorites from people who've heard it. Delirium, another mountain reference. I love a theme. The vibe of this one is reminiscent of the Empty Dream Machine and its lonely vibe. So you have this very sad Damon vocal, very melancholy, but then suddenly Mark E. Smith comes in and he just does this incredible heavy synthesizer and he just chants Delirium. It's almost what's the name of it? Talking Heads-esque in a way. I really, really enjoyed. If you sit in the darkness with a loaded gun, it's time for you to get up and run. It's corny, but it works. Marky Smith's part might be the most electronic part of the album. Weirdly complements the other parts of the track. Definitely one of the most dancey parts. Damascus, which is a single that's been released that we will play you soon. Long intro, but the instrumental is so vibrant. Originally for Plastic Beach, so kind of cheating, but has such a great energy. Lots of people moving around to this song at the listening party, voluntarily or not. The Shadowy Light. At 92 years old, Asha Bossel takes us back to India with a very spiritual vocal here. Great synth loop backing track. Damon's chorus is accessible. This one admittedly doesn't do much for me on first listen, but I bet it'll grow on me. Spoiler alert, it has. I do love the steel guitar. One of my favorite sounds. Sounds beautiful. Casablanca, industrial sounding. Another Mountain reference. 3/4 waltz time is very nice. Vocals here remind me of the song Kansas from the Now Now. This could have been on the Now Now, which is a huge compliment. Also reminds me of Damon's other band, The Good, the Bad, and the Queen. Penultimate song, The Sweet Prince. Floaty, almost cozy, sounds like a lullaby. Easily the most relaxing track on the album. Very 1% from the Now Now. Gorgeous, really peaceful. And finally, the last song, which Gorillaz usually stick the landing on, is The Sad God. Synthesizers galore, lots of bleeps and bloops. Again, 3/4 time. Feels conclusive. No more mountain, no more song are some of the lyrics. I adore the instrumental. Damon playing the Sad God part, giving people things and them making bad of it. Reuses the mountain motif from the very beginning of the end, or right at the very beginning of the album, at the end of this song. There's the lyrics, I gave you atoms, you built a bomb, and only screens to see your face. So that's a song-by-song analysis of the album, but in terms of its tackling of the themes of death and its tackling the themes of life with such an Indian backdrop, it is stellar. This album is such a stellar soundscape. I am blown away by how incredible this album sounds, not just in terms of production, but in texture. I need another sip of water. This album is rich with texture. As someone who doesn't listen to a lot of music in languages like Spanish or Hindi or Yoruba or Arabic, this album makes me want to. There's a lot of songs that had a bit of a learning curve for me that I thought this one isn't my favorite, but the more I listened to it, the more it blew my mind because of how bizarre it is to me, how eclectic it is. I just had to punch through the wall and I ended up loving it. And if that wasn't the best part of the listening party, the best part was getting stickers. I got stickers at the listening party. Yay. Yeah, I brought that literally to hold up for 2 seconds. I got stickers and I got a poster that I was too big to fit in my bag. And I got to pre-order a listening party version of the album. But I do want to actually name drop every single person that is featured on the album because I'd be remiss if I didn't. Dennis Hopper, Ajay Prasanna, Anushka Shankar, Aman Ali Bangash, Ayan Ali Abangash, Asha Puthli, Bobby Womack, Dave Chugoy the Dove, Jalen Gonda, Black Thought, Sparks, Tony Allen, Bizarre Rap, Kara Jackson, again Anushka Shankar, Idols, Black Thought, Johnny Marr, Anushka Shankar, Treno and Proof, Johnny Marr, Anushka Shankar, Marky Smith, Omar Soliman, Yasin Bey, Asha Bozal, Gruff Rice, Ajay Prasanna, Aman Ali Bangash, Ayan Ali Bangash, Paul Simonon and Johnny Marr, Ajay Prasanna, Johnny Marr, Anushka Shankar, Black Thought, Ajay Prasanna, Johnny Marr, Anushka Shankar. I named multiple times. I went song by song. The goat of this album is Anushka Shankar because she is a stellar sitar player. And I hate to mention a band I mentioned a million times, but you're going to see why. Anushka Shankar is the daughter of Ravi Shankar, who I knew before this album was even announced. Ravi Shankar is maybe the most famous sitar player, I believe, of all time. Very prolific sitar player. And best friend of George Harrison of the Beatles. The reason I mention that is because the Beatles had a lot of sitar on some songs like Love You Too and Within You Without You from Sgt. Pepper. So that was my introduction to sitar and more East and Southern Asian sound. And so for the most prolific sitar player to have his daughter on this album, and Damon apparently grew up listening to Ravi Shankar more than the Beatles. So this is sort of a full circle moment for him. And it's amazing. The way sitar can either be the main part of a song or the backdrop of a song, it's incredible how versatile that sound is. Walking into this album is like walking into a beautiful, beautiful Indian city. And I mean that with such praise. I do want to mention, we played you a weird trailer earlier in the episode. Coming out the same day as the album is a short film that the group has put together, a group famous for their animated music videos. This short film / music video consists of The Mountain, hold on, let me find it here. Actually, I have it in the script, don't I? The Mountain, The Moon Cave, and The Sad God, 3 different songs from the album. It's being pushed into one music video, one 8-minute long music video. And you know what the coolest part about this music video is? Actually, let me cut directly to break the fourth wall. Leslie, do you know The Jungle Book? Did you watch the little trailer there we played? Did that look Jungle Booky? It did, because this music video that's 8 minutes long is entirely animated like a movie from the 60s. It is entirely hand-drawn on cells. Has no digitation at all. Entirely 100% hand-drawn. Scanned on a computer and uploaded to computer, but actually only in like paper, which is incredible. I love that. So we have that to look forward to, and we obviously have the album to look forward to. So I think that's a good time to play you some more music, I would say, after that entire info dump. We're going to play you, I believe, only one song now. Hopefully we're going to hear the song only once. Yes, The God of Lying. The God of Lying. I like The God of Lying. This song reminds me a lot of, like I said, from Gorillaz and Demon Days. It's very spooky. I love the lyrics. A lot of the songs are about death and coping with death. And there's one part in the song, I want you to hear for it, where I think it's Idols when they say, halfway to the liquor store and they took all my money. Yeah, that's that one. Yeah, it's kind of a funny part of the song, but I really, really enjoy it. Coming up after the music break, I'll be giving my final thoughts on The Mountain and whether or not I recommend you check it out, and especially whether or not it stands up on the shoulders of Demon Days and Plastic Beach. Please don't forget that you can follow us on social media at the DCSA Media Hub. You can follow me on Instagram at AlexRAE, that's R-A-E. You can follow this show on Instagram and Twitter at The Radar Life, also R-A-E. There's a theme. In the meantime, from the yet unreleased album, The Mountain, here is The God of Lying by Gorillaz, featuring Idols, live from the Media Hub on riotradio.ca.
Human and being in it, because the being knows the unknown, the spiritual, the alien.
Who am I? Are you happy with your housing? Are you climbing up the walls? Are you deafened by the headlines? Or does your head not hear at all? Are you pacified by passion? Are you armed to the teeth? Are you bubbling at the surface of what's cooking underneath? Are you dying for an answer for what they call good grief? But there's a terrific chance there's nothing beyond what you believe.
Oh, don't you say that you think that I'm in glory. Oh, don't you say that you think I gotta get no glory. Running to the exit with a huge grin on my face, screaming, hope is behind, and I wanna get high.
I went to the liquor store and they took all my money. I stared into the mirror there and begged the man to love me. Do you love your blessed Father, anointed by fear of death? Do you feel the lies creep on by as soft as baby's breath? Do you beg that truth will set you free? Are you shackled by the keys? Well, if I was you, I'd stay strapped in, 'cause all you got is me.
Oh, don't you say that you think that I'm in glory. Oh, don't you say that you think I gotta get no glory. Running to the exit with a huge grin on my face, screaming.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 60 of The Radar, the episode where I'm talking about Gorillaz' upcoming album, The Mountain. How exciting is it that I get to say the upcoming album that I've heard that you haven't? I'm so privileged. What a cool experience that was, by the way. I had to stand the whole time. They had no seating for anybody, which is ridiculous, in my opinion. That's a minute little detail, but to go all that way and then, yeah, you all have to stand kind of awkwardly between these shelves of records with two big speakers. But it was a really, really cool experience because there were other people there for the same music. One part in the album, and I want you to remember this. I want you to come back to this part or remember this or write it down. But there is one part on the song Delirium, which features Marky Smith, that has that drop, like I said. When that drop happened, I actually saw a girl's jaw drop when it happened and turned to her friend. Like, that's how powerful that is. And Gorillaz, at the end of the day, even if I kind of skewed off their track a bit with Cracker Island, with this album, they brought me right back in. I can't think if there's a meme of some guy being like, I was out and then they brought me back in. That's kind of what it is. Gorillaz mean a lot to me because of what they mean to me in music. I mean, I've been called the music guy before, not to toot my own horn. And the only reason that is because of Gorillaz. It's because of their eclectic, kaleidoscopic array of guest artists and features and genres that's allowed me to get used to it, to love this, to connect with people. And it's so important to me to see also how successful the group has been since then. I believe when I first started listening to them, they were at 7 million monthly listeners. Now they're at 40 million. Oh my God. So that it's just incredible. As for The Mountain, would I say The Mountain stands up against the other albums, Plastic Beach and Demon Days? I'm going to say yeah. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say something about this album that, in particular, a lot of reviews. There have been reviews posted by professional journalists online, in case mine's not good enough for you for some reason, which, okay, thanks. But those reviews will detail the fact that they may not be as obsessed with the group as I have been, and that their interest on the group ends at Plastic Beach, that albums like Humans, The Now Now, and Song Machine and Cracker Island just did not do it for them, as well as Demon Days and Plastic Beach. And I'm a huge defender of albums like Humans and The Now Now and Song Machine, and a lot of Gorillaz fans are. But it's really hard not to listen to this and go, oh, we're back. Oh my God, this is it. This is really good. You know, this is so... My favorite thing about this album is its consistency, is its theming. You know, like Cracker Island, its themes are pink and cult. Okay. And Song Machine, its theme is guest artists. Okay, that's every Gorillaz album. The Now Now is kind of 2D on his own. It goes a little too much into the cartoon lore than I would have liked. When I was a teenager, I ate that stuff up. I loved that. That was my favorite thing. Now it's the music as I get older, which makes sense. But this album strikes such a perfect balance. I think the characters should work for the music and not the other way around. And I love it. I love that they brought the fictional character. If you've seen the art, look up the art. I was considering submitting some art to this episode and throwing that up, but like the album cover we played you, like, look at these stickers. Look at how cool and crazy those look. That's so interesting to me. I love it. I love how outside the box Gorillaz is. And The Mountain, honestly, I think is a new classic. I really, really enjoyed this album front to back, and I can't wait for it to release. And again, what a privilege it is that I get to say, I can't wait for you to hear it. It's also like, this is such a cool opportunity to get to go to a album listening party and, like a journalist, write down my thoughts on each of the songs and then talk about it on my radio show the next day. This has been such a gnarly experience, and I'm so lucky and I love it. And I'm so excited to own this album on vinyl. If anything I've told you today has even remotely inspired you to check out this album, I can't recommend it enough. I'm going to ask in real time, Megan, have you listened to Gorillaz before? No. Okay. Has the songs today appeased you at all? Have you thought they were okay? Were they okay? Were they good? Okay, good. Again, I'm gonna apathetic thumbs up. I'm okay with that. A thumbs up is a thumbs up. Like I said, I love Gorillaz. I'm biased. I'm shifting into Gorillaz mode. It's great. I don't know if I have much else to say about the album other than that. Check out the album when it comes out. In 2 days, 2 days, 12 hours, 10 minutes, and 45 seconds at the end of this sentence on February 27th. It's very good. I'll tell you what other people are saying. Uncut Magazine says, Damon's gap year in India. Death has never sounded so joyous. The Skinny says, Gorillaz explore life, death, and what comes next on their 9th album, The Mountain. Slant Magazine gives it an 80, says that Albarn has managed to channel his feelings of loss into music that teems with warmth and empathy, while continuing Gorillaz' mission of providing a platform for a multitude of voices and cultural traditions, positions The Mountain among his most accomplished albums. Mojo Magazine, Gorillaz' most ambitious and moving record to date. Record Collector, a record of sorrows, salves, and state of the now despair. The Mountain is a rich, rewarding take on living with and after loss, brimming with feeling, character, and vibrant pop purpose. Rolling Stone UK says on their 9th album, Damon Albarn and Jamie Hewlett acutely tackle their own experiences of mortality. The result is something unexpectedly beautiful. That's maybe the best way to put it. This album blew me out of the water. Every single blew my mind. Every track has blown my mind. And I'm very, very excited for the music video, which also they're showing in theaters in a weird way. I want to mention that. They're showing the music video in theaters in a weird way, like with a niche indie film picked by a cartoon character from the group. Really neat gimmick. I really enjoy that. They also just played the album in full twice in LA last night and the night before. And they did a series of shows in LA, I think, or maybe London, I can't remember, back in November, before the album was even named out loud. They did a show of Demon Days in full, and they did a show of Gorillaz in full and Plastic Beach in full, and then this album in full, in secret, with no phones. So the way they're promoting this album is great. They did this thing for Cracker Island where they got the cartoon characters to stitch and duet TikToks, and it was just an ugly template. But the way they're doing this album, the culture they're bringing into it, there's a million listening parties in India, especially for this album. I love it. The texture is rich. The sound is beautiful. The features complement the track. I adore it. I highly recommend it. That basically concludes the episode today. Please do check out The Mountain when it comes out on February 27th. Check it out on Spotify or Apple Music, wherever you find your music. In the meantime, please don't forget that you can follow us on social media at the DCSA Media Hub. You can follow me on Instagram, AlexRA, that's R-A-E. You can follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at The Radar Live. I'll see you back here next week. In the meantime, here is Damascus, perhaps the most eclectic single they've released so far that we'll be playing you. It features Omar Soliman and Yasin Bey, playing us out live from the Media Hub on riotradio.ca.
The fantasy is real, feel free, enjoy.
كل يوم عين بعينه باجر وينه وينه.
New brand news in our old school voice. Hush حبيبتي, it's time to make noise.
راحت مني ندامة أنا ماني متبح ضينه.
Here to navigate the waves in the dark, no map. Stars in the heavens and the breeze on my back.
راحت مني ندامة أنا ماني متبح ضينه.
Hallelujah, holla, fado, yalla. Turkish coffee, Starbucks, get off. Here to navigate the waves in the dark, no map. Stars in the heavens and the breeze on my back. Know where I'm headed and I'll be where I'm at. That's the way it is and it's like new arrival, fresh arrival. New arrival, fresh arrival. New arrival, fresh arrival. New arrival, fresh arrival. New ship from Damascus, Nemo Point. The fantasy is real, feel free, enjoy. New brand news to the soulful voice. Hush, Habibti, it's time to make noise. Fuddle, yalla, hallelujah, holla. Turkish coffee, Starbucks, she corny. Navigate the waves in the dark, no map. Stars in the heavens and the breeze on my back.
لا يا حبيب الأول لولاك دار ما توسك.
Big ship from Damascus, Point Nemo. Inspiration, movement, hysteria, we go.
لا يا حبيب الأول لولاك دار ما توسك.
Yes, super fresh as I'm known to be. See a real cool ruler, don't overheat. Yes,
لولاك سيبون حجازي يحرم علي ملبوسك.
they say hallelujah, holla, yalla, yalla. Turkish coffee, Starbucks, warning.
لولاك سيبون حجازي يحرم علي ملبوسك.
See me navigate the waves in the light of the black. Stars in the heavens and the breeze on my back. Say hallelujah, holla, yalla, yalla. Turkish coffee, Starbucks, she corny. Know where I'm headed and I be where I be. They got it how they got it, but not like me. Bravo, fresh bravo. Bravo, fresh bravo. Bravo, fresh bravo. Fresh bravo. GA in the place you so. Dante in the place you so. Suleiman in the place you know. Make 'em know everywhere you go. Top down on your radio. DA in the place you so. Dante in the place you go. Suleiman in the place you know.